So hey anime fans, the series name is What If Naruto x Invincible x Harem, so let's start the series. Footsteps echoed in the desolate hallway. Before a blazing flame illuminated the corridor, it was dark there. The surrounding walls and the present path were visible due to the light itself. You humans are quite cunning creatures yourselves, a tall demon in a trench coat mumbled as he guided the torch in his line of sight, echoing a heavy sigh through the dead cave. Known as Damien Darkblood, the demon is a guest from the chaotic world that nearly all people may call hell. He was not supposed to be in this cave. In fact, he didn't. However, he had to. His job is anything that has to do with demons. In an attempt to learn more about the unknown, humans on this planet begin to fantasize about encountering monsters or engaging in lethal rituals. Their death is caused by their curiosity. They embark on excursions with their young companions, only to lose their lives due to their own disregard for the paranormal. Because they would be hit with a dose of reality by what they are looking for and what they believe to be fairy tales. And as things stand right now, he was stumbling through the corridor. The rough cave floors were covered in corpses, and the walls were smeared with human blood. Some separated, some in contact. The only emotion visible on the faces of those individuals who survived with their eyes open was fear. "Pardon me." Darkblood approached a woman's mutilated body slowly. In an attempt to ease her spirit from seeing the horrible mess any longer, he bowed slightly and closed the appalled eyes. Unfortunately, the soul is never able to rest, especially after witnessing the life she had cherished being torn away by whatever it was that attacked her and the others. Darkblood cocked his hat. The trail of blood dripping slowly from the female's mouth caught the demon's gloomy attention. He dipped a finger with claws into the blood. Exclamation point, a dim vision came into view. The final sights the woman saw before she passed away were the image that was playing back in his head. The picture saw innumerable individuals yelling. All of this satanic cult's shrouded members attempted to flee. In desperation, pushing and battling with one another. After a brief, black, shadowy blur, the lights went out. Darkblood got up and said, "Poor fool, didn't even make it close to the exit," he said, shaking his head. He got up and looked ahead before continuing. As he looked around, he noticed the deep claw marks on the wall and the corpses. It seemed like a beast had been let loose. Before grimacing, he hesitated once more and touched one of the hollowed-out gashes. A hint of demonic power. The sense of evil energy was no different for the detective from hell. He was essentially born of it, after all. However, why do these cuts on the wall appear much more lethal? How foolish of these humans to be the cause this creature emerged for the slaughter. What were they toying with? Then he noticed a big hole in the wall, and next to it were the broken remnants of two big, ornate doors. Damien Darkblood heard a cry out of nowhere and scowled. Was that a child's cry? His eyes fell as he stepped through the hole. Groups of bodies and bundles huddled in a circle. The young, aged, and elderly were among these mutilated bodies. Strangely, every hand, whether whole or torn, pointed toward the center of the circle. To Darkblood's surprise, a baby boy was in the center of the puddle formed by the blood leaking from the bodies. Among the bodies, the boy was curled up in the blood. Naturally, the blonde hair contrasted with the horrifying crimson. Both cheeks were grazed with 3 marks. The infant stopped sobbing and opened his eyes when he finally heard movement. Innocently, bright baby blues were gazing into the detective's piercing white pupils. "Gah!" The infant began to wave its plump arms in a welcoming manner at the demon. Darkblood approached and, ignoring the blood that now smeared his sleeve, slowly lifted up the infant with one hand while holding the torch. He peered about while holding the cooing kid. The appearance or even a hint of demonic energy had vanished. How peculiar, he groaned, lowering his gaze back to the infant. The infant cocked its head. Dark blood continued to move over the bloody flooring, saying, "A demon enters a cave of a satanic cult, only to face an angel that bathes in a puddle of blood, which was surrounded by corpses." What an interesting story. As they left the room, the baby's giggling sounds were the only sounds that could be heard in the dim hallway. Who is the kid? Who is he? Well, for now, only time will tell. Indeed, just for the time being. Chapter 2. Hey, Dad, why are we all the way out here? Are we going hunting? You're taking me hunting, aren't you? I knew it. Can I catch a big wolf to show off at school? That will really impress Kate-chan, can I? Can I? I'm not your dad and we are not hunting either. You told me that you wanted to go on a hike. I'm free now, so that is what we are doing. Naruto was grumbling, "You are my dad, you are just refusing to say because you are embarrassed that mom left you or something." He smiled as he looked at the trees around him and repositioned his small sack over his shoulder as he passed the enormous creature who was his father. Blabbering and pointing at anything that captures his attention. "Look at the birds in the sky. Hey, Dad, look at the little ants carrying that big leaf, amazing. Hey, Dad, look at the dash." Dark blood followed along in silence while giving the boy a strange look. People would shout in amazement if they saw a demon and a human youngster strolling side by side on an open forest trail. Probably yelling when the devil appeared and for being concerned for the youngster who was walking by him. Before reaching a large oak tree, Naruto rushed as fast as his small legs would allow and exclaimed, "Hey, look at that bug." He leaned over. A beetle was climbing higher on the bark at eye level now. It was an odd beetle with a big, nose and a small curvature on its body. Naruto cocked his head and said, "This, a roach?" Without even looking at the squatting child, Dark Blood said, "A rhinoceros beetle." After jumping back to his side, Naruto said, Hey, that was actually my second guess. Yeah, I was definitely going to say the Ricorus beetle." Rhinoceros beetle. Dark Blood notices the boy sticking his tongue out at him and threateningly waving his hands out of the corner of his eye. The demon's lips curled up. How funny. He believed that he would never see the child again after returning with the baby and his report to the Global Defense Agency all those years ago. For him, fate had different ideas. The infant would always find his way, even when he was surrounded by a lot of people, under the radar scan of the most sophisticated sonars, and confined in the most secure facilities. Dark Blood understood that almost anything could become possible, therefore he wasn't even sure if it was magic or a spell. Surprisingly, this prospect turned out to be one of his few favorites in the world. When the agitated Naruto noticed that the monster was quiet, he relaxed and tugged on his sleeve. "Hey, Dark Blood said as he gazed down, his fedora casting a soft shadow over his eyes. Naruto gave an uneasy shrug. "It's okay if Mom isn't here, you got me, and don't worry, I'm sure Mom will come back. She has to because moms are supposed to care for their children, or that is what I read so far." "I'm not your dad," he said, pulling his arm free from the child's hold as the upward curving lip collapsed into a straight line. "This is why Mom left," Naruto said, his eye twitching. His response was a simple grunt. "She has to, why did she leave this scroll behind if she didn't?" the kid said, sighing as he pulled a scroll from his bag and opened it to see his name scrawled on the top. According to the old man and his father, this scroll appeared next to him as a newborn on his birthday. Naruto was certain that his mother was the source of this. He was so certain. And he'll boast to his dad's wrinkly face that he was correct when she returns. The bored Naruto soon put the scroll away and began chirping at the irritated behemoth beside him. Before long, nightfall had arrived. Naruto tired as he sat down in front of the bonfire while wearing the pajamas that Mr. Donald had given him. As his hands raised to enjoy the warmth of the flames, a slight smile developed. "We got a lot to do tomorrow, Dad, we have so much to do, so make sure you get lots of rest." "I don't sleep," Dark Blood said as he sat down beside him, still dressed in his trademark detective uniform. In an awkward move, Naruto snatched his father's tail and wrapped it around his body. Dark Blood didn't show any signs of opposing it. "I was thinking of concentrating on my powers while we are up here, since nobody is around. Look, my demon eyes just grew another circle, for some reason." Turning, something odd happened. His normally huge pupils dilated as 3 circles gradually appeared and encircled his naturally blue eyes, which pulsed and changed to a somewhat darker shade of purple. Dark Blood remained silent while the child extended his arm sideways. "HNN," focused Naruto. A big rock that was buried in the ground began to tremble on the side. In a split second, his eyes widened and his arm shook slightly. The big rock began to tremble violently before erupting from the earth. Following his motion, Naruto lifted his arm higher with the rock. The pebble was hurled aside as he quickly served his arm to the side. Animals in the area were abruptly alarmed by the impact's sound. "Yes! Go demon powers," he exclaimed, pumping his right fist into the air. Dark Blood scowled as he looked into the boy's eyes. Even those eyes were mysterious to him. He felt a slight chill when he first saw those eyes, which startled him because he hadn't felt that way in a very long time. It seemed as though those eyes could see right through his soul. The demon simply nodded, palming Naruto's obnoxious smile. Soon, a glimmer attracted their attention. Wow! There was a dash of white in the night sky. A shooting star. Naruto said gravely as he started to push the demon. "Make a wish. That is a childish thing to do." Before putting his hands together in prayer and huffing, Naruto said, "Please bring back Mom to beat up Dad." Dark Blood averted his gaze from the child and fixed his gaze on the shooting star trailing into the night. He tipped his hat and looked at Naruto, who was chanting for a woman to emerge to beat him. "I wish that these enjoyable moments never end. I guess," began a joyful hum. New York City years later, a huge winged beast screamed as it flew through the smoke of a burning building, spewing a cloud of venom from its jaws. The local news was also recording and broadcasting this occurrence. The global defense agents were busy trying to drive the beast away while simultaneously evacuating the city and tending to the injured. A giant wyvern. "You got to be shitting me, I want everyone to double the speed. Move it. Move it. And Donald, where's the backup?" Cecil Stedman screamed. "Sir, Omni-Man and the Guardians of the Globe are handling their own fights elsewhere, but don't worry, I called in other help," Donald Ferguson said to his employer as he peered down at the informational sending equipment. Cecil arched an eyebrow and swore a little louder within. Normally, this task couldn't be completed by anyone. "Well, who the hell did you call?" "Already here, sir," said Donald with a smile and a tilt of his glasses. Cecil said, looking up with narrowed eyes. A figure emerged from the sky, descending freely from the clouds as the enormous reptilian beast went on the rampage. "Hey, You stupid lizard. The only thing the beast heard was the desire to wreak even more havoc. That's enough of you. Universal pull. The beast was abruptly drawn into the sky by an unseen force in front of a dozen witnesses, both in person and virtually. Additionally, a little dot was moving in the direction of the beast with the intention of meeting it in the center of the wide sky. To acquire a close-up look, the most sophisticated cameras zoomed into the image. It turned out that the dot was a blond male figure with a dark cloak that thrashed madly in the air as he fell so quickly. Eyes with concentric rings appeared in the optical view, strange but captivating. The guy smiled, swiftly extended his right arm, and opened his palm, unfazed by the pace at which he was falling. Cecil observed a blue ball composed of energy condensing and growing quickly until it was as large as the wyvern but marginally smaller. "Well, if it isn't our local wild card," he said. "Yup," Donald said as he observed the alleged demon's kid, about whom everyone had been muttering, making his way to the beast. Naruto yelled, retracting his arm. The struggling wild wyvern, unable to flee, could only watch as the enigmatic stranger finally confronted it. "Get saged." The massive energy ball struck the shrieking beast's body. Giant Rasengan. Witnesses saw the clouds in the sky separate from the attack's blowback in front of a million onlookers. The shockwave passed across both the earth and the sky. The Sage of Teen Team has arrived. Chapter 3. A young blonde girl was reading the newspaper with excitement in an abandoned building. One page had an image of the sage in midair, fearlessly diving straight at a flying reptilian monster of some kind. The girl, engrossed in the picture of her bro's awesomeness, gazed forward with sparkling eyes and exclaimed, "Wowee! I can't believe that big bro Naruto made it in the newspaper yet again. And do you see the size of his Rasengan? It's almost the size of that boulder that he brought home last week." "Come on," she said, putting the newspaper beneath her armpit and encouragingly shaking both fists. "Come on. You are almost there." A green flat sheet spread out on the floor from the opposite side of the room, getting closer to its destination with each stretch. It was a line drawn across the center of the room using a piece of worn-out chalk. As the green sheet continued to approach the drawn line, the young girl applauded. The young girl cheered as she passed the newspaper and then made a new line that was better than the previous one. Before emerging as a hunched creature that resembled an alien, the green sheet trembled. Amazing, Nikki, it is truly amazing," the stooped figure said after taking a long breath. "I never expanded myself to that extent," he said, slowly getting to his feet with the young homeless girl's assistance. "I bet Naruto can expand his stomach to that extent," Nikki continued, laughing. To chastise the girl, the extraterrestrial gave her a little squeeze on the cheek. "Hey there now, little one, even on Mars, us Martians, do not talk bad about others behind their backs, so if we do not do it then why should humans do? You say not to talk bad about others, but didn't you talk bad about him when he swiped away your chocolate bar when you weren't looking?" the adorable young girl snarled in Martian Man's compassionate face. The alien's face shifted. "That was a rare moment which I had and apologized for." Nikki looked at Martian Man and put her hands on her hips. Before her, the more powerful and purportedly superior species dared not meet her gaze. "Now that I think about it, where is Big Bro?" the girl asked, grinning, as she glanced down at her cracked watch. "He should be here by now," she said. "Now that he is famous I guess he is too good to hang out with the little people, right Martian Man?" she said with a forlorn sigh before yelling in a phony hate. "Naruto should be at the serving, well, soup right now if I am correct, said Martian Man, shaking his head. Right, Nikki palmed her face. Her older brother was not just strong but also incredibly kind. Who thought that a real-life superhero would be volunteering to help feed the poor and homeless at a renowned soup kitchen? The true MVP was Naruto Uzumaki. Nikki exclaimed, "He's a real man, with a puffy chest." "I suppose he is," Martian Man said with a smile as his wristband began to beep loudly. "Danger," he said, hastily rising and making his way to an open window. Nikki remained silent and then let out a sigh. "All right, take care, love ya," she waved at him. Before leaving the building, Martian Man turned to smile one last time at her. Nikki then grew irritable. Why does neither Martian Man nor Naruto ever take her on missions? She is also able to assist. The soup kitchen at Beckwell Community Center. As he filled the bowl of a hungry homeless man, a teenager with spiky yellow hair exclaimed in amazement, "Just who is the sage, Amber? I mean, he is such a cool guy, to be able to fight that monster on equal grounds in the sky is so cool, don't you think?" A dark-skinned girl with an apron said, remaining silent while carrying dishes. "I mean, just who is he? To be so badass, the world may never know the true name of our beloved hero." An elderly grandmother almost burst out laughing when Amber refilled the next bowl. Hey, Amber, can't you be serious, Naruto? We can't keep talking all day long. Just help me finish these meals, said Amber, letting out a sigh before glancing at her fellow volunteer's foolish smile. Before Naruto could speak, an elderly man who was shaking and holding a cane spoke up after hearing that someone had brought up Sage, the tiny hero in the cloak. Sage was a kind fellow. I remember when he saved my cat from up a tree when the police refused to help me. Sage gave me $50 just so I can buy my medication at the pharmacy, said an elderly woman, who was excited. Then she said, he even helped me cross that long road in downtown. What kind of superhero would do such a deed when he could be facing many other dangers, a kind one that is. Many elderly and young homeless folks grinned as they considered the teen team Sage from around the tables. Amber used to get a kick out of seeing these poor individuals smile, but these days they simply irritate her. Extremely obnoxious. When she turned to face Naruto, he exposed the contents of his dark blue jacket. The magnificent Sage was smirking back at her on an orange shirt. Amber nearly hurled her ladle at the foolish teenager. Naruto grinned and gently slapped away an old woman's hand that was attempting to squeeze his cheeks. "Oh come on, Amber," he said. "I'm just having fun." Amber took the used utensils and went to the sink, saying, "I never knew that praising yourself in such a manner would ever be described as fun." Naruto Uzumaki was undoubtedly a prickly individual, yet he is also renowned for his generosity toward the citizens of this city. Additionally, he was her first friend with superpowers. Yes, she was aware of his secret. What was it? Because all those years ago, Naruto was stupid enough to tell her while grinning as like it didn't matter. It was a huge deal, but over time, her amazement with Naruto after that revelation diminished until she was able to view it normally. On the one hand, he was a hero, but on the other, he will always be that stupid fool she loves. Hey Amber. When she glanced back, she saw Naruto's evasive expression. "I'll give you an extremely rare Sage autograph if you buy me some food later," he said, taking out a notepad. "You save people, for a living. You are a hero that fights for, what, peace and justice. Yet you are unable to afford some food for yourself." Amber said, cleaning a rounded plate after spraying detergent on it in frustration of his foolishness. Naruto approached the solemn schoolgirl and put an arm around her shoulder. "Oh no, I do have the money," he said. "But, why spend it when I can use your money?" In her heart, Amber swore at him 1,000,000 times. Amber gave him a foolish shin kick, but Naruto still smiled. "You might as well spend this extra day off from work with your kitchen buddy. Let's just enjoy a typical day today." HQs of the Guardians. Each of the Guardians of the Globe drew back, gasping for air as they gazed upon their startling foe. The tall, muscular man in front of them was looking back at them with even colder eyes. Omni-Man, the strongest man on the planet, was wearing a white and red bodysuit. They saw only an opponent in front of them, and they did not see the stern and compassionate hero. With eerie thoughts in her brave heart, War Woman clutched her mace tightly in both hands before charging at the toughest man. What was happening? He was attacking them, but why? Why in the world did Omni-Man sound the warning? However, she was aware that they had fallen into his den at that same moment. His snare. She twisted with velocity, gritting her teeth to escape a flying fist, and then aimed her mace at Omni-Man's skull. Omni-Man made the pointless mistake of pushing the mace aside and aiming it toward her chest, hoping to hit her in the heart. The tyrannical fist struck nothing but air as a red blur flew. Omni-Man looked up as two enormous fists swung down. He sidestepped the punches and then glared at the man who was as physically strong as he was. The strongest man made a move, but it was again cut off by a red blur. Just as Aquarius blasted a water jet that was able to momentarily halt Omni-Man's movement, Red Rush withdrew with the Immortal. As he pushed forward, Aquarius clenched his teeth, the water jet growing stronger and bigger in volume. The Green Ghost was able to get behind Omni-Man and launch multiple projectiles before phasing through the floor while he was occupied with resisting the pressure strength of the blasted water. Without thinking, Darkwing pushed a button on his belt, and then Omni-Man was surrounded by a number of tiny explosions. Despite appearances, Darkwing was perspiring beneath his mask. This battle was the riskiest one they had yet engaged in. And Omni-Man was still able to endure all of these hits despite their combined efforts. What a beast! A white figure rushed toward Red Rush from the smoke. Red Rush used all of his strength and speed to sidestep and fight back before letting out a shocking shriek as two hands clamped down on the sides of his head. Red Rush, everyone hurled themselves resolutely toward Omni-Man. As Red Rush's nose began to leak blood, they all became agitated. For his team, what felt like an eternity of suffering for Red Rush felt like a century. They wouldn't get there in time. In that moment, Martian Man made a profound calculation and knew deep down that they wouldn't make it. Unless there was something quicker. With a sudden hissing cry, Martian Man swiftly grabbed something from his back and threw it. Even when a series of strikes from the struggling Red Rush fell on his chest, Omni-Man tightened his grip. Blood was streaming from his mouth, but he chose to ignore the pain. Omni-Man had a strong desire to murder the speedster, but before he could do so, when he felt something pierce his flesh from behind, his eyes widened. He felt more vulnerable and in more pain. The Green Ghost leaped to her feet and seized her friend before he could crash into the wall behind her, and he roared as he pushed Red Rush aside. Omni-Man looked back down and reached for the black rod, but as soon as he touched it, he stopped. Omni-Man felt two odd eyes staring at him in his head through the pain, which made him stutter. He felt a strange chill creep up his back. Omni-Man was shoved aside by Immortal's shoulder as the strongest man became distracted. The greatest guy crashed into a huge wall, bringing a portion of the wall down with him, and Immortal's eyes were fixed on the sticking stick. Each member, including the severely wounded Red Rush, looked at Martian Man in disbelief before focusing on the fallen figure that began to rise. Is there a weapon that can truly puncture even the strongest flesh? Naruto, meanwhile, gazed silently in one direction from a distance. For a second, he noticed. His eyes narrowed, then his pupils changed to resemble the rings around them. Alien guy. We sure did feed a lot of people, Naruto. Now that you mentioned it before, I do feel kinda hungry now. Why don't we get something to eat? Naruto, said Amber, stretching as she made her way back to the break room. There was no one in the break room when I looked around. Out the window, she could just make out a black silhouette before it vanished, and strange whipping noises could be heard in the distance. Amber was silent before speaking. Stay safe. Sage, Chapter 4. As Omni-Man held onto the rod, veins protruded from his forehead. The most startling thing was that he couldn't break it with his own strength. Blood began to drip from the wound as he tugged the rod, and he eventually drew it out with a cry. After the weird weapon was removed, his vision momentarily faltered, and when it did, Martian Man bounded in his direction. Omni-Man was swiftly encased in Martian Man's body as it changed elastically. He was not even a step behind the Guardians of the Globe. This was their opportunity. Immortal and War Woman, the two powerhouses, moved first. Immortal struck Omni-Man in the face with such rage that he was knocked into War Woman. With a horizontal stroke of her mace, War Woman nailed Omni-Man's head from the side, causing it to swerve and flow from the cut. Huah! Exclamation point. Omni-Man's eyesight faltered once more before rapidly settling. He immediately began to build up his muscles. Martian Man was blasted off because he was unable to contain enough force to further constrict due to the abrupt expansion. Darkwing sprinted in the direction of the one weapon that could damage Omni-Man. He could use it to assault or defend Omni-Man's position, or he could get it to help one of his colleagues, but he had to brace himself before his body hit the flying War Woman. Darkwing's lungs were emptied by the impact, and both figures slammed into the wall. Omni-Man kicked Immortal away after dodging Aquarius' water blast, but as he turned, War Woman's mace whirled down. Omni-Man reached for the mace and turned without turning to look. Red Rush and Green Ghost's eyes grew wide. His target was Aquarius. Red Rush's eyesight grew somewhat blurry, but he managed to seize Green Ghost's waist and raced in Aquarius' direction. When Aquarius saw War Woman's mace fly in his direction, he froze. Even though it was distorted by the pace she was traveling at, the Green Ghost cried out, "No!" At that precise time, Green Ghost touched Aquarius back in a whirl of red and green. The weapon phased across Red Rush, Aquarius, and the Green Ghost as Omni-Man swung the mace. The three members vanished in hues of blue, green, and red. "Why are you doing this?" Immortal drew his arm back and stepped forward with strength and speed. Omni-Man drew back his own arm and threw the pointless weapon away. Before the two giants separated, a shockwave was produced as their fists collided. Darkwing threw his hallmark weapons at Omni-Man, who slapped them away as though they were toys, and plummeted from above just as they parted. Omni-Man was surrounded by explosions, but from his unconcerned look, it appeared that none of them were able to harm him. Omni-Man scowled at Darkwing and said, "Useless toys," before going to face War Woman. Darkwing quickly removed his grappling hook and swung away, saying, "Tisk." Omni-Man and War Woman met in the center of the room. Then it was physical combat because she didn't have time to fetch her weapon. Before striking him with her own blows, War Woman swerved past Omni-Man's furry hands. Avoiding a swing, she slammed a knee into the side where Omni-Man had been stabbed. The wound being targeted caused Omni-Man's body to shake, a phantom chill spread. He then struck back with a fist swing before the swift Red Rush caught it and launched a multi-pronged attack on Omni-Man. Red Rush was about to be grabbed by Omni-Man when a guy abruptly appeared on the ground. Martian Man encircled Omni-Man a second time from behind. Before Omni-Man with Darkwing by his side, Green Ghost phased. After twirling the black rod in his palm, Darkwing aimed it viciously. Omni-Man tipped his body in disgust at the sight of that deadly staff, then used his feet to knock the two figures away. Aquarius then launched the black rod into the air, where it was caught by War Woman, who gripped it as it descended. She stabbed Omni-Man in the thigh, aiming down. The Immortal's enormous fist interrupted Omni-Man's yell. Omni-Man cried out angrily, "That is enough," as he was repeatedly thrown back. Omni-Man flew after Martian Man was blasted away, hit Immortal in the face, and then turned to slam War Woman's face into the ground. Omni-Man swatted out as if he were dealing with a fly when a red blur appeared. Omni-Man continued to assault everyone in his line of sight despite the weird eyes recurring in his thoughts. His muscles stiffened, but he made them continue to contract and work. Aquarius launched a water jet in an attempt to stop Omni-Man's motion. In an attempt to stop the pressured water, Omni-Man stomped and raised an earthen wall. He picked it up and threw it at Aquarius. Together, Darkwing and Green Ghost phased through the dirt, demolishing the man-made barriers and attacking Omni-Man's companion. With a sigh, Omni-Man yanked the rod out and tossed it out of reach of any of their hands before focusing his gaze on the Martian Man who was emerging. He sped in the direction of Martian Man. In an instant, Omni-Man and Martian Man met. As it descended, a clenched fist pointed at the alien's life core. Martian Man. After getting up off the ground, War Woman ran ahead, followed by the Immortal. Red Rush also sprinted, but his figure stumbled abruptly as his vision went out. His heart sunk uncomfortably as he made a valiant effort to regain his mobility. Green Ghost, Aquarius, and Darkwing are not far behind. Even Aquarius understood that he couldn't put forth water fast enough to outstrip that punch, so he lifted his hands. Martian Man's life briefly flashed as the fist approached. He remembered how horrible it was to be banished from his home because of a crime he had not committed. Then he remembered the first time he had ever seen the Global Defense Agency on Earth. His thoughts turned to his good recollections of his life, his encounters with strangers who welcomed him, and his newfound pals. A recollection of a blonde youngster who was laughing and happy as he related all of his escapades with his monster father. Then he recalled meeting a little homeless girl who was in need and who smiled for the first time when he demonstrated his abilities. "I apologize, Nikki, but this is where my journey will come to an end." The fist approached steadily. Suddenly, Martian Man felt a soft hand clap against his right shoulder. He was then shoved aside. There was a tremendous noise, then a tiny shockwave. A young man in front of Omni-Man clasped his arms together and closed his eyes, which caused his arm to be deflected from the side. After the young man straightened his position and the debris from the shock flew in all directions, a dark cloak poured from behind him. The figure gently placed both palms on Omni-Man's chest. Eyes popped open. When Omni-Man eventually saw the icy eyes that had twice flashed across his consciousness, an unexplained sensation filled his heart. The person who dared to prevent his murder was targeted with a punch. 1, 2, 3, 4. 5. A chilly voice was announced before to the hit, "Almighty Push." A powerful force repelled and proceeded to move through Omni-Man's body. The ground beneath him, the walls behind him, the entire building and range shook backwards before collapsing, and Omni-Man was viciously flung hurtling away at great speeds. Everything in Omni-Man's direction dispersed as the invisible force, which was unstoppable, moved in one direction. A cloud of dust rose up behind the man. Green Ghost and Aquarius were observed assisting the twitching Red Rush in standing up after the dust had dispersed. War Woman grunted and snapped her broken nose back into place while an injured immortal held her up. Darkwing's eyes widened in surprise as he gazed forward after retrieving the black rod and War Woman's mace. As the sun's rays fell on each of their faces, they were able to see the open sky and the demolished ground. The Martian man approached his companion limping. Sage was his codename response after opening his mouth. Instead of answering, Naruto, also known as Sage, just looked ahead. His dark-shaded, purple-ringed eyes gazed off into the distance as he opened and closed his hands. Everything that was in life was wiped out in the course of his attack. Sage whispered as he saw a distant peak in his vision. He immediately slammed his fist down. A circle with odd symbols dispersed throughout. A huge dark green beast was on all fours next to the sage when a flash of smoke filled the chamber and was carried away by the wind. Though altered, the enormous monster bore a resemblance to the chameleon species. A long tongue slipped out of the chameleon's mouth, causing its body to tilt, its torn wings to begin quivering, and the end of its tail, which resembled a snake's head, to hiss. A single dark purple eye with rings scanned the room before locking upon the image of its summoner, and a sharp horn punctured by many black rods pointed in the air. After giving his summons a head pat, the sage turned to face the heroes who were staring at him. "We have to move," Sage said with a sigh. "I can already see that he is about to get up, even though he's struggling." Sage waved his hand without even waiting for an agreement. Before opening its mouth and quickly starting to gather up every member of the Guardians of the Globe, including the sage, the chimera-like chameleon made a noise. The enormous chameleon hesitated, then peered around, as though to make sure it had every creature. It quickly began to mix in with the surroundings and quickly crawled away, leaving behind only the mostly intact remnants of the former Guardians' headquarters. When Omni-Man returned to his spot, he dragged himself out of the crater and then knelt on the mountainside, his lips spit out fresh blood. He closed his eyes and inhaled heavily. Hard eyes gazed back into the world after a while. HQs of the Global Defense Agency. After hearing an alarm, numerous teams of global defense agents assembled and pointed their weapons at the enormous creature that had invaded the base. Donald was marching behind Cecil Stedman as he walked forward, telling the agents to get down. Donald was about to start talking again when the big chameleon settled down on its belly and opened its jaws. "Remain calm. Everybody, stand down. This creature is one of ours and not the enemy." As Sage and the severely wounded Guardians of the Globe members emerged, Donald and Cecil stared. "Medic team, get a move already," Cecil said with a heavy frown as he gazed at this situation. When the paramedics gathered the heroes and swiftly assessed their condition before leading them to the medical bay, Donald retorted, "What are you waiting for, people? You got the orders, move it. Move it. Move it." Sage and Martian Man met the director's solemn gaze. Cecil, whose heart was also deeply shaken, demanded, "I want all the details, nothing left behind, even if it wasn't evident." Donald pulled out his vintage notepad, prepared to listen and take notes. Just as Sage opened his mouth to speak, his phone began to vibrate. He was going to disregard it until he noticed Martian Man's sweet smile. "I'll explain first, go answer," he said. Sage looked at the elderly guy for permission, his eyes softening before becoming serious once more. After a moment of silence, Cecil sighed and said, "You got 5 minutes." He turned to face the Martian man and asked him questions, to which the Martian duly responded. Donald's expression changed from concern to incredulity as he recorded the information. Standing there as Martian Man started to explain, Cecil was equally astounded. To answer his phone, Sage moved to the side. "Hey Kate-chan. Sorry I didn't answer your calls, I was caught off by something, seriously," he said cheerfully as he calmed down before answering the phone. There was silence on the other side until a worried voice called out, "Naruto? Are you okay?" "Oh, you know me, I'm just feeling peachy. Anyway, I'll call you back later, I got some things to work out with the old man," Naruto said, his face quivering before he faked a laugh. Before massaging his temple, he abruptly ended the call. "Can't really calm down, it's hard to hide your feelings when you just faced the strongest man in the world. Kate-chan is definitely going to ask me about this later, she can see through me like paper, seriously, so troublesome." A serious expression quickly returned to his face when he heard his code name mentioned. Sage then proceeded to share his perspective on this entire bizarre tale. The incident even made his own heart ache to think that the man who was considered the greatest hero proved to be the world's biggest traitor. Perhaps it was mental manipulation. Was he coerced? However, Naruto was certain of one thing. Eventually, the world was going to turn upside down. Chapter 5. Cecil Stedman stopped working in his office, his eyes focused in contemplation. As usual, Donald was at his side, providing him with up-to-date information on current affairs pertaining to their agency. He only jumped a little as the director slammed his fist against his desk. "Sir," said Donald. After pushing all of his paperwork aside, Cecil got up and walked to the window nearby, grunting as he went. Donald stood behind him, considering his next words, but ultimately the often chatty man himself was discovered to be silent. Given how long he had been with Cecil, Donald was well aware of his present thoughts. Sighing, Donald handed over his most recent report. "The surveillance team that you have ordered has already moved out, from Omni-Man's house, and far in a long range, everything within the site will be monitored per orders given." Cecil nodded and said, "Good, good," before folding his arms and said, "The Guardians. The Guardians are also getting the best treatment that we are securing for them," Donald grinned lightly. "They should be up and running in no time, these guys are the real hikers, sir, you won't need to worry about them." "And Omni-Man?" Cecil said, glancing at him. Donald sighed. "Prior to his release, including the usage of our medical equipment, his injuries have unfortunately fully healed, sir, we brought him back as good as new." The director gave a heavy-faced nod. I just don't understand, sir, we don't have the full story, but with the Guardian incident, we could have dash." Cecil gave his assistant a stern look. "We could have what? Restrain the most powerful man on the planet? You and I both know that's not going to happen because we both know that man will mostly wipe out many if not all of us before we can do something." Over the years, Donald heard and saw what Omni-Man was capable of, and a complex sensation arose in him that he was powerless to deny. However, it is startling to consider that such a proud ally would turn into such a dangerous foe of the global defense, or perhaps he should say the world. Cecil also had a hint of annoyance on his face. "I don't know why this was happening. Donald followed Cecil as he made his way to the door. They observed several Global Defense Agency employees going about their duties as they strolled. Some are carrying hazardous technology, those that examine and search through data related to every supernatural occurrence that takes place globally. In order to carry out their duties, scientists, physicians, researchers, and several other agents with specialized disciplines have gone about the agency. The calm director, clenching his fist, was likewise enmeshed in the emotional whirlwind that raged for 3 weeks. He will always remember Omni-Man's smile when they first began caring for him. They had no choice but to assist the man in his recovery. While the majority of the agents there were aware of the occurrence, very few of them were aware of what had happened. Because they saw the heroes with serious injuries, they believed that the guardians of the globe, including Omni-Man, had been ambushed by an enigmatic foe. Nearly everyone in the agency was aware of the situation even 3 weeks later, but fortunately, Cecil was able to defuse the situation with Donald's assistance. Since the truth cannot be avoided, he must thoroughly investigate and determine the entire dang reason why Omni-Man ever did such a thing. In addition to the Guardians of the Globe, Sage, and Donald, let everyone make up their own theories and fabricate the reports. The ensuing pandemonium would be enormous if it were known that Omni-Man had turned around and attacked his supporters. The greatest hero in the world becomes a traitor. Cecil's imagination flashed over the gruesome headlines and titles, but for now. Donald, everything else related to the truth of this matter needs to be sealed. I already talked with the Guardians and Sage. Omni-Man himself is keeping silent, probably due to his wife and son from finding out, and make sure to keep a good eye on that son of his. I can deal with Deborah, but if that kid is anything like his father, then we got 2 Viltrumites to deal with. Donald looked gravely at it down. It was bad enough to have one Omni-Man, but another one. However, Donald recalled that Mark Grayson was a courteous young man with a decent head over his shoulders when he first met him. He couldn't be involved in whatever plan his father was involved in, can he? Furthermore, it was said that Mark's abilities had just recently been discovered. "Will do, sir. My team will also try their best to find the answers we are looking for. I mean, Omni-Man wouldn't have attacked us without a sole purpose, but with him attacking us, why now? If he chose, he could have done it a long time ago, but why choose to act now? We will try our best to find out the answers, he said, pausing, his hand pressed on his transmitter. There was a message received. Frozen, Cecil asked, "What is it now?" "There is some kind of attack that is happening downtown. A strange portal has appeared and groups of what appears to be aliens are coming out of it, wielding energy weapons. Multiple casualties were made." "You don't have to worry about that," a bored voice said abruptly from behind. "Son of a dash." Donald pulled out his revolver and aimed it without hesitation. Cecil gazed at their guest after coolly lowering Donald's hand. Agents nearby soon realized the newcomer was going to approach, but Cecil told them to stay off. In front of them was a well-known red person wearing a trench coat. Cecil scowled and said, "Damien Darkblood, what can I do for you?" "This matter, I am quite invested in it, though I feel like that boy is keeping some details hidden from me," the demon investigator said, tilting his fedora. After taking a few steps forward, Darkblood asked, "Would you care to answer?" as he glanced down at Cecil's composed face. "The news has been classified as top secret. Sorry to get your hopes up, but you won't be getting any answers from me," Cecil said, standing composedly, too composedly, actually, and looking directly back at the demon investigator. The two then engaged in a standstill competition, gazing intently into one another's eyes. Donald also came forward, not letting his guard down. "What do you mean by, 'you don't have to worry about that,' statement?" he asked. "The boy should be heading there right now along with his team," Darkblood said, averting his gaze from the director and cocking his head toward Donald. Team," said Donald as he lifted his glasses. When the investigator turned away from Cecil, he muttered a curse in his heart. How was he going to keep this old devil Holmes from knowing? The demon was overly inquisitive, even though Damien Darkblood was an excellent detective. If Darkblood follows up on this, Omni-Man may. Cecil gritted his teeth and turned to leave. Donald hurried after. When Darkblood noticed that the two were not paying attention to him, he simply tilted his fedora thoughtfully. Behind him, his tail moved softly. He couldn't resist thinking, what even caused Naruto to conceal information from him? Downtown, Invincible, also known as Mark Grayson, swiftly soared into the air and across the seas. Since his mother kept him at home while his father recovered, it was his chance to save lives. He put on his costume and headed downtown after seeing on the television that there had been an attack. His eyes widened when he finally arrived in the downtown area and saw an actual extraterrestrial army marching out of the portal. Beams were being fired by the invaders toward buildings, the streets, and even the civilians. The police were also helping the citizens flee, but their efforts were ineffective despite their use of firearms. Blood flowed onto the ground from all around the scene as a police car was suddenly shot into the air. As rays essentially cut their limbs, the people who were unlucky enough to be in the aliens' line of sight were shot. The image made Invincible clench his fist. He inhaled deeply several times, then he swooped into the action. After he landed, he noticed a mother running with a limp and a child in her arms among the crowd of people running. Invincible's heart tightened as he watched a beam of energy going directly toward the two of them as beams of energy flew everywhere. Just as he was going to dash in, he was blasted out. The running mother instinctively dodged the beam as he sailed through the air, but she collapsed abruptly after the hit behind her. To protect her infant, she landed on her sides. The sound of his cries, "Please, somebody. Help me. Bring my son to safety," broke her heart, but everyone was running away in spite of the mother's entreaty. The mother attempted to stand again, but her pain prevented her from doing so. However, after glancing at her infant's face, the mother bit her lip, got to her feet with force, and limped off. With a cough, Invincible sprang off the ground and said, "The pair." He swiftly lifted his head. The limping woman was the target of an alien smirking from a distance. "No, don't," Invincible said, putting out a startled hand. He swiftly flew back up, but as he did so, he caught a glimpse of an extraterrestrial approaching an elderly woman who was crawling on the ground. Fear and anxiety twisted Invincible's face. Who was he going to save? The elderly, or mother and son? Then his body moved by itself at that instant. Weakly, the elderly woman raised her head to observe the green alien's ruthless smirk. No. Then, however, she was tenderly held by a man dressed in a blue and yellow costume. As Invincible hugged the elderly, he thought of something. Keep it together," he said. The mother and son. His eyes widened as he painfully turned to look back, expecting to see the corpses. He observed a group of aliens flying through the air above him in a flash, taking their tanks and weapons with them. Their mouths were probably open to scream, and their eyes were wide with shock. The words, "You. This has gone far enough," reverberated throughout the battlefield. All of them, whether they were citizens, aliens, or even the police, looked in the same direction. When their own members fly and crash and die, the aliens in particular make a lot of noises. They gazed, wondering what had happened to make them this way. The wounded woman, believing that she and her child's lives were over, looked up to see. She mumbled the name of the person in front of her while feebly holding her sobbing infant. Sage. Sage grinned before gently lifting the mother. "It's okay," he said softly, "I'll get you to safety." Sage then approached the police officers while carrying the wife and the infant. All of a sudden, Sage was attacked from behind by a few energy beams. Look, Invincible's eyes widened, and then, to his own surprise, the beams abruptly scattered in the air. The alien military leader said, squinting his eyes before yelling commands. The wounded were compelled to lie behind, and the civilians continued to run. As multiple beams were ejected, panic broke out. But before reaching a hand out, Sage walked quietly to the police. The rays were scattered once more as though they were coming into contact with an unseen force. As he transported the woman to a police car, Sage, who was in the center, was observed walking without showing any signs of concern. All of the fired beams were swept away in time for all of the surviving inhabitants, including the injured, to escape, making the scene really remarkable. "My God!" someone said. At the conclusion of everything, everyone turned to face the sage, who smiled brightly. Invincible, who moved as well, handed the old woman off to a nearby ambulance, and gazed in wonder at Sage. Who is this guy? Sage turned around and started to approach the astounded aliens after handing the mother and the infant off to the shocked cop. Thank you. When Sage saw the diversity of corpses on the ground, his eyes clouded, but he first grinned. Older people, women, men. Even youngsters were dispersed around the landscape, their still bodies seeping blood, much to the sage's dismay. Then, Sage extended his arm toward an extraterrestrial who was trampling on a deceased child's skull. Abruptly, the alien's body was yanked away. Sage caught the mid-flight extraterrestrial by the neck in front of everyone. Desperately grasping the arm that was strangling him, the alien made choking noises. Sage narrowed his rippling eyes at the terrified alien, realizing that the effort was pointless. Not even the children, for that. "I won't show any mercy." Dust burst as Sage smashed the alien down, pushing the earth outward. He said as he caught a glimpse of an alien tank pointed at him. A fast motion was made, and the tank was hit back, exploding in the process and killing several adjacent aliens. "Don't you dare." Before he winced at the mutilated alien body below him, Invincible touched down close to Sage. "Don't worry, I got your back," Invincible said, shaking his head and shoving his hands up toward the sage. Sage got back up and moved back until he and Invincible were standing next to each other. Soon, the two were encircled by the aliens, who had vengeful and hateful eyes. Sage looked at the stranger and then at the aliens around him. "All right then, whoever you are, the two of us are against this large army. My team is almost here, so we have to stall for time. You think you can keep up?" Uncertain of whether it was joy or dread that surged through his veins, Invincible's heart thumped as he lifted his hands higher. "I don't know, but I'll be damned if I just stand back and watch so many people get hurt. I'll fight or my name isn't Invincible." Sage smirked after appearing surprised. "Invincible? That's your name? That's a pretty perverted title. All right then, let's do this." "These aliens are about to be saged," he said, slamming a fist into his open palm. Red grew everywhere, and someone shouted an order. With his teeth clenched, Invincible roared out. Sage's eyes gleamed before he also threw himself out. In the downtown battle, Earth just prevailed. Chapter 6. As he delivered several quick blows to a punching bag, a shirtless Naruto watched with narrowed eyes. 1, 2, 3, 4. The punching bag rapidly returned to its original shape after being dented by the swift blows. Abruptly, he braced his upper muscles and started throwing blows. The punching bag was unable to keep up with the force of the hit as one blow after another landed, and the material began to shred. The equipment's interior was then exposed when the lower part fell to the ground. Naruto paused, looking back sheepishly and saying, "Just knocked out another bag, bro. Dang. Another one, bro. That's like, the 2258th, bro. You don't have to worry, bro, 'cause I'm rich, bro. Really, bro. Thanks for not charging me, bro." Naruto then gave the bro a high five. Kate Cha and Samantha Eve Wilkins, who were chatting on the couch, just rolled their eyes at this situation. Eve laughed and snorted. Kate's eyes were sparkling as she stared. The females exchanged glances. "Boys," the two sweaty, shirtless guys grinned and held each other's arms while ignoring the girls. It didn't take them long to realize that both of their girlfriends were staring at them. "Brothers before hoes," the two sworn brothers exclaimed. Eve turned her head to her buddy and said, "I think these boys don't appreciate us," as she raised her right hand and then clenched it. The fist was quickly engulfed in energy and glowed pink. "What did you say about us?" "Hey Kate," she said. Kate raised her head and crossed her arms. "Yeah, I also think that our men don't appreciate us," she said, glaring at the two. Rex laughed and said, "Come on, babe, we don't mean that," before approaching Eve and bending down to kiss her. Eve frowned during the kiss, but she eventually closed her eyes and gave in to his advances. The total opposite of the self-assured Rex. In front of Kate, Naruto arose clumsily and said, "We don't really mean it, Databeo." As Kate watched the anxious hero, her already fake tough face couldn't help but break entirely. Her expression relaxed. Naruto blushed slightly and cursed him inside as he disregarded the sound of Eve and Rex making love. Why was Rex so self-assured? The man was a complete loser. Kate's eyes blinked at her self-described devil boyfriend, and her lips curled up. Naruto leaned down slowly. He held Kate's cheeks tenderly before swallowing. As Naruto looked at the face that had captivated him since he was a young child, his pulse raced. He was always fond of Kate as a child, always following her and attempting to win her approval for being such a fool as himself. Her name was Kate Cha, and it sounded so nice in his ears. Whether it was playing or something else, he would always attempt to be with her, and when he was a little older, he asked her out. However, Naruto was not deterred in the least by her rejection, on the contrary, it served as motivation. His heart was on the verge of exploding when he discovered that they both have comparable cloning abilities. He then asked her once again. Nevertheless, she smiled shyly and turned him down once more. He clung to her like glue, only glancing at her during their early years, when they were going on adventures and creating kids' team, when they were battling monsters, bad guys, and anything villainous. Even though they haven't dated in a few years, Naruto flashed Kate a foolish smile as he reflected on his previous struggles and efforts. Being with her always made him recall the happy and terrible times they had spent together. Naruto Uzumaki would do all in his power to make her happy, even if he is a complete mess when it comes to relationships. "I still can't believe that, you're finally mine," that Kate Cha, the most amazing and the most beautiful girl that I have ever known, actually agreed to date a dumb guy like me. It makes me so happy." He tenderly stroked her forehead. With just affection and love in their eyes, they gazed at one another. Naruto blurted out the final few words before pausing, his face tinted the color of fresh tomatoes. "I love you. You mean everything in the world to me. You're like the moon to my sun, you know. I would give up everything just to be with you and make you happy." "See, can I kiss you?" "Sure, you knucklehead," Kate whispered sweetly as her eyes glistened and she tenderly touched Naruto's cheeks. Naruto reluctantly put his lips to hers. Kate closed her eyes gently. Rex, who had just split from Eve, simply spit in the clone couple's direction, saying, "Ugh, why so lovey-dovey, gosh Naruto, you're such a loser, why don't you and Kate go skip under a rainbow somewhere?" While he was evaluating Naruto in his heart and felt uncomfortable throughout the romantic encounter, Rex couldn't help but feel envious. "Damn," he said, why was Naruto so suave with his words? God, he was such a loser. "Shut up," said Kate, Naruto, and Eve as they turned to face Rex, their faces as expressionless as canvases. Following that, Kate and Naruto resumed their intense desire. Rex's body sagged. He turned to Eve in the hopes of carrying on where they had left off, but she mercilessly covered his face with a magazine since she had no heart. She murdered Rex's soul as she waved him away, saying, "You ruined the mood, you can hang out with Robot now." Rex complained and took a seat next to Robot, who was standing off to the side. "Don't worry, bro," Naruto said as he quickly approached him and patted his shoulder. "I'll be here for you." Rex smiled and said, "My bro." Naruto extended his fist. Without hesitation, Rex gave his best friend a fist bump. The robot, who was close to the two, remained silent and unnoticed. "Still, I can't believe that you and the other guy fought everybody before we got there." Rex sighed after taking a sip from a bottle of water. He pushed Naruto, "You could have left some for us to handle, but no, you had to be the tough guy and take everybody out without us, mostly me, in general." Naruto was proud, still sore about that loser. "And besides, it's not my fault you were late, I had to get there quick and put a stop to the invasion so no more people could get hurt." "It's not my fault we were late," Rex said, glaring at the stationary metal object. "Perhaps we could have arrived on time and kicked some alien ass if someone had given us a faster route." Rex jumped a little as the robot abruptly moved in his direction. Kate, Eve, and Naruto laughed. "Alright, robot, since Naruto doesn't know who that guy was, can you find out some information? I want to meet the guy who stole my spotlight," Rex said, glaring at them and then going to their supposed leader. "Our spotlight," I heard Eve say. Rex waved his girlfriend away and then looked at Robot. Sure, babe," he said. He was still in shock that Naruto and a man he had never heard of swiftly beat the entire army he had seen and read about on the television. Yes, he could accept that if it was simply Naruto, but the man in the blue and yellow outfit was someone he had never met before. Who the devil was he, really? Additionally, Rex became envious when the newspaper went to considerable lengths to express gratitude to the heroes while printing out different images of them fighting the alien invaders. It was cool and badass. Even worse, he wasn't included. A newcomer to the field, of sorts, he is also a new hero to the city. In fact, he made his debut not too long ago, Robot said as he combed through his database and retrieved material from multiple news sources. A screen was then projected onto the wall through Robot's eyes. "Ooh, a video," Kate raised her head. In the video, A man wearing blue, yellow, and black flew and hit a villain before he could launch a bomb at the cops. The villain was flung through the building after the punch broke his visor. As he watched the villain fly through the building's wall and out the other side, Rex stroked his chin thoughtfully. Before turning to face the television, Robot stated, "He appears to have the abilities of flight and enhanced, or superior physical strength, as seen in the video." His robotic vision fell on the young guy, and he said, "He dons the hero name, Invincible, to represent his identity." "Invincible?" Eve asked, raising an eyebrow before pouting. "Isn't that a little arrogant?" she asked. As he watched Invincible stumble through his flight and continuing to knock the blaster around the streets and into buildings, Rex exclaimed angrily, "Extremely arrogant, guy must have a pull up his ass or something." "Seems like a total newbie though," he said. "Yup," Kate said as she crossed her legs. "It looks like he practiced but doesn't have that much control over his movement, Naruto." The others looked to the teammate who had clashed with the stranger in reality. "He's..." Naruto thought about what to say. "You know what, I have to agree with you on that one. He is a newbie, completely new to combat. He is clumsy for sure, but his strength makes up for it. It is like he has no fighting style. He was just throwing out punches as he flew and went. And besides, look at his outfit. It looks so lame, right?" Rex said with a sneer before returning his attention to the screen. As he analyzed the words, "By contrary, I believe that his outfit seems more suitable for combat rather than yours." The robot's gears spun inside of him. "What?" Rex jerked his gaze in the direction of their commander, asking if he also had bolts for brains. "My attire is obviously superior." Robot only elaborated on the comparison while enlarging the picture of Invincible's attire. Eve had a startling thought when Robot began outlining some opinions and suggestions regarding how Invincible's attire might have been changed to improve escape and maneuvering. "Hey, how about we recruit this guy into our team?" Everyone, with the exception of Robot, turned to stare at Eve in confusion as the conversation subsided. Then Naruto blinked. "Recruit him?" Before making her way to the center of the room, Eve said, "Yeah, recruit," pointing to the film that was broadcast on the wall. "I mean, there is nothing wrong with recruiting another member, right? Plus who knows, his strength and flight could be useful for us during missions," she said. "But you and Naruto can already fly," Kate said, her expression peculiar. "Float," said Naruto. Before settling down, Kate gave her pretend boyfriend the finger. "Having another team member. I mean, yeah, we could do that, but wouldn't it be a bit weird?" she said. "Why would it be weird? We had teammates before. Teammates who were temporarily acquainted with us, but your suggestion does seem quite plausible. Perhaps I could send a request to Dash," Robot said. "Whoa, whoa, whoa," Rex exclaimed as he got up to take his place and looked around the room. "We can't recruit him." "Why not?" Eve frowned at her boyfriend and put her hands on her hips. Rex was shocked to learn that his team was thinking of hiring a random man who happened to have assisted his brother in the fight. Because it's teen team, and before that it was kids team. We formed this team up when we were just kids and built it to where we stand now. Sure, there were others, but in the end, it has always been just us who made up the team. It will feel weird if some stranger, a nobody, just join us, right? Naruto slapped Rex's back and said, "Hey, calm down," adding, "It was just a suggestion." Rex growled, "Yeah, a stupid one." Eve scowled. As she cast her vote, Kate stated, "All in favor of us recruiting this guy if he doesn't already have a team, raise your hands." "Me," Eve said, smiling confidently and lifting her palm high in the air. "So do I," the robot said rigidly, lifting an arm. Rex grinned and said, "Well, looks like Dash," after observing that neither Naruto nor Kate decided to raise their hands after a few seconds. Naruto waved him away, saying, "No, I'm still thinking." "You're considering it?" Rex stammered. "I'm with you on this one. Bringing someone new and possibly permanent to the team is a bit weird for me," he said, turning to Kate, who shrugged. Rex glanced back at his brother. "Come on bro, you got to be in this with me. If you really think about it, do we really need another team member?" Naruto cocked his head thoughtfully. He looked around the room. Eve gave him a nod, her mouth moving and her eyes almost indicating agreement. The robot remained silent as usual, but he had already cast his ballot. "Kate." Naruto faced her. "It's your call now, 2 votes and 2 rejects, whatever you choose, I'll stand by your side," Kate said with a simple smile. In order to prevent himself from embracing her in front of everyone, Naruto essentially forced himself down. He then turned to face his best friend and brother, the one person who was always there for him. That is the best male friend. After thinking about Invincible's performance during the invasion and his resolute look when he rescued the elderly woman from the alien, Naruto said, "I say." And grinned as he decided, "We give the guy a chance." A faint neigh reverberated in the distance from the outside,